Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Rosslyn Hill Chapel, a spiritual home for open minds. I'm Rodger Mason, a chapel board member and worship assistant for this Unitarian service. Whoever you are, and however you are this morning, there's a space for you here. Whatever your race, gender, sexuality, class, age, and physical and mental capacity, we welcome you in the spirit of love. We have small candles of joys and concerns which you are invited to light during the service. Also during the service, there is a children's chapel and creche for children aged 2 and above. Babies under 2 are welcome in the creche, but need to be accompanied by an adult. If you're watching at home, please join the virtual side aisle at midday. The Zoom link was in the weekly email, and you can find it via the link in the YouTube description. And those of you who in the chapel, do join us for tea and coffee in the real side aisle after the service. At 12:15, we will have a short discussion of this month's theme of vulnerability. So grab yourself a cup of tea and join the Reverend Kate for this Soul Circle discussion. Any other questions you might have about being a Unitarian after the service. At 6 p.m. this evening, we will have a mindfulness meditation, and at 7 p.m., our Sunday evening gathering is Soul Fuel, a wonderful mix of acoustic music, poetry, storytelling, and meditation. On the 26th of March, at 3 p.m., members and friends are invited to the chapel's online AGM, a short but important meeting to discuss decisions about the chapel's future activities. That's on Sunday, 26th of March at 3 p.m. via Zoom. You can find information about these and all our activities on our website, or if you prefer a paper copy, pick up our March Open Mind at the steward's table. The collection will be taken during the offertory music, and you can donate by cash or card. I'll pass along the rows during the collection, and you can tap to donate £5, or tap more than once if you wish. In February and March, we've taken a decision to divide the collection between two good causes: the British Red Cross Ukraine Crisis Appeal and the DEC Turkey Syria Earthquake Appeal. And now the chalice lighting. We light the flame as a symbol of our liberal religious faith with words from the Chinese classic, the Tao Te Ching, translated by Stephen Stenoud. Cultivate virtue in yourself, and it will be true. Cultivate virtue in the family, and it will be overflowing. Cultivate virtue in the town, and it will be lasting. Cultivate virtue in the country, and it will be abundant. Cultivate virtue in the world, and it will be universal.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Kate Dean. I'm proud to serve as the minister for this beautiful and sacred place. You are all very welcome here. Now, we come together as a spiritual community and we like to get to know one another. But before we do, I just want to draw your attention to a little invitation you might have seen inside your service sheet. It's for 2 weeks' time, and it's a Mother's Day tea, which will be on the 19th, Sunday the 19th of March, in the afternoon. And it's for mothers, for parents, and for all those who care, a celebration of all those who care, with tea and cake, craft activities for children, and some live music as well. So I do hope you'll join us for that on the Sunday, the 19th of March, between 2:30 and 5 o'clock. But for now, let's now turn to our neighbour, turn to someone near you, say your name and welcome them to chapel this morning. Thank you, everyone. I hope we can continue our conversations over tea and coffee after the service. But for now, let's sing our first hymn. It's in your green hymn book. It's hymn number 202, Children of a Bright Tomorrow. So let's listen to the introduction and then rise as you're able for hymn 202. Now, I have a story for all ages, and it's from the Hindu tradition in the Indian subcontinent. It's called The Cracked Pot. And it's about a girl who every day went down to the river to draw water for her master, and she had 2 clay pots dangling from strings, and she had a pole across her shoulders, and she walked along with these pots every day, and she picked up the water and she came back again. And she noticed something about one of the pots, but she kept on walking and picking up the water and coming back again. And what had happened was there was a crack in one of the pots. And so each time when she came back to her master, one pot was full of water, and actually that pot was quite proud of himself, how full of water he was, and he was able to deliver his quota of water. But the other pot was not so happy because he knew he had a crack and he was a bit leaky. And so eventually, because pots aren't really supposed to speak, the cracked pot plucked up the courage and he said to her, "I'm really sorry. You've been walking every day to get this water and come and bring it back to your master's house, and I haven't really been doing my bit, have I?" Well, this was a very kind girl, and she just smiled and she said, "I wonder, on the path, have you noticed anything about the sides of the path?" And the cracked pot said, "Oh, I haven't really noticed." And she said, "Well, on the side where you are dribbling the water, there are some flowers. Did you notice that?" And the cracked pot said, "Well, actually, now you mention it, I did notice some beautiful flowers along my side of the path." And she said, "Do you know, I noticed the crack, and I noticed there was a bit of a dribble coming out from the bottom. And so I planted some seeds along that side of the path. And every day, you thought you weren't doing very much, but you were watering the seeds. And now we have beautiful flowers that I can pick for my master's table." So we may all have a few cracks, a few imperfections, but it's what makes us who we are. Now we'll sing our children out to their activities. I invite you now into a time of prayer and meditation. We come together in fellowship each Sunday with hearts full of joy and full of concern. Our hearts are lifted with hope at the news of the protection for the high seas and all the marine life which exists in it. Yet we also look with concern to those countries where there continues to be great suffering. If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to say their name aloud in the coming moments of stillness, so that we may also hold them in our prayers. Spirit of life and love, God of our hearts. We give thanks for those who bring us joy, and we pray for the safekeeping of those whom we hold in concern. For all those names, spoken and unspoken, may they be surrounded by the loving kindness that we offer them today. Blessed be, and amen. Now let us sing our next hymn, which is inside your order of service. It's Voice Still and Small. Rodger to introduce our reading.
Kate is going to read the poem. It was written about 900 years ago by Li Qingjiao, who is China's best-known female poet, and she's compared to Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Please think of her, as we listen to this poem, as Mrs. Li, and there's a portrait of her on your order of service. She's describing her feelings at the end of a busy day in early spring when her husband was away.
This is Spring in Wuling, translated by Rodger Mason. Drafts stir the dust and blossoms fall. I'm all alone with no one here to sweep. It's late and I'm too tired to comb my hair. If I could chat, all I would do is weep. They tell me by twin streams, spring is now fair, and we could plan to drift down in a boat. Although I'm still afraid it wouldn't float. meditation position, and then Rodger will read a poetic reflection, and this will be followed by a time of silence. So your feet on the floor if you can, your connection to the earth. You might want to close your eyes at this point and just focus on your breath for a few moments.
To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risks must be taken, because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. They may avoid suffering and sorrow, but they cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live.
Words by William Arthur Ward, and now some stillness and silence for us to reflect on those words. I am fond of that story about the cracked pot because it reminds me that even something that appears to be flawed has some merit or use. Most disappointments in time can reveal a truth that makes them worthwhile experiences. And we all have cracks, don't we, and imperfections that make us who we are. The strength of our vulnerability is in risking revealing our authentic self. The courageous act of telling it like it is and bringing our own perspective to the conversation. Yet, as we will see, the risk can become too great if we feel compelled to overshare and encounter an unpleasant vulnerability hangover from the experience. The cracked pot also reminds us that despite all our assumptions, nobody is perfect. Don't we all sometimes think that everyone else has got their act together and we're still just trying to figure things out? As we dance in the half-light between holding ourselves in and revealing too much, it's important to remember the part that showing our sensitive side can play in strengthening our relationships. As C.S. Lewis has it, friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things that gives value to survival. So it makes sense to put some energy into those bonds which enrich our lives so much. When I think back to the beginnings of a friendship I hold very dear, it started with a challenge, a film challenge, in fact. I had recently completed a screenwriting course, and I liked the idea of seeing my work on the screen. I had heard about the 48-hour film challenge, which, as its name suggests, challenges filmmakers to create a short film within the space of 2 days. That's to write and film and edit all within 48 hours. The twist was that you were assigned a title and a genre drawn out of a hat. I'd become friends with someone new at the office where I worked, and I knew that she was interested in acting and writing, so I invited her to join us on this crazy challenge. At 8 a.m., we all arrived at a cinema in Mayfair and pulled the title and genre out of the hat. We got jerked beef and a romance. As you can imagine, most of the time was spent with the budding screenwriters scratching their heads trying to come up with some kind of plot. It was hard. In fact, it was really challenging. And I'm not going to pretend that we ended up with some kind of mini masterpiece, but at 8 a.m., 48 hours later, and with very little sleep, we did hand over our completed film. And along with the efforts of film students and professional production companies, our little film was shown at the Curzon Cinema in Soho in all of its wonky, imperfect glory. The experience of going through that together bonded us as a group for many years, and in particular, the bond grew between me and my work colleague, who has become one of my best friends. She saw me at my best and at my worst in those 48 hours. Even though we no longer live in the same city as each other, whenever we get together, it doesn't take long to fall into a comfortable companionship, which we have cherished as our friendship has grown over the years. As William Arthur Ward reflected in his poem, risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. Showing our true colours is healthy vulnerability. In showing our vulnerability, we are revealing our authentic selves, yet we are also risking being judged. At times when I have overshared, I have felt like I've peeled back the dressing on a wound that has not been given time to heal. And then I discovered that there's a term for it: the vulnerability hangover. Psychologist Brené Brown describes how we have all been in situations where we're with a friend, colleague, or family member, and we feel that deep yearning to connect. Despite the fear, we feel that push or need to share something meaningful, and before you know it, we've let it all out. The next hour, day, or week, she says, that feeling of regret comes over us like a warm wave of nausea. Oh my God, why did I tell her that? What's she going to think about my family? Who is she going to tell? That, says Brené Brown, is the vulnerability hangover. So when we speak about showing our vulnerability, we should not take this act lightly. Newcomers to the chapel sometimes comment on how accepted they feel when they know that they will not suffer judgmental attitudes. At least that is our aim, isn't it? Do we talk about our beliefs over coffee? Maybe. At least I hope we will during our Soul Circle discussion today. But sometimes we simply deal with our differences by not talking about them and perhaps gently brushing them under the carpet. If we are open-minded Unitarians, we should have the capacity to listen to each other's differing views without reeling. But perhaps, like Li Jinghua, we may feel afraid that our little boat wouldn't float, but sink beneath the weight of all our care. I believe that we should be a place where you feel comfortable and safe to talk about your faith, and without fear of judgment or shaming. Many people in religious groups feel they cannot be vulnerable or truly authentic about their beliefs, about their doubts for fear of being found out or judged, or worse still, ostracized from their community. I think we could perform a public service by allowing each other to speak our truth, being able to speak out rather than just trying to fit in. Non-conformity is part of our Unitarian DNA, so perhaps we can be a little braver and show all our beautiful colours, the beautiful colours of our different characters, rather than resorting to drab conformity. To thine own self be true. In Eastern spirituality, Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, is depicted as having 1,000 eyes to see the pain in all the corners of the universe, and 1,000 arms to reach out to all corners of the universe, to extend the Buddha's help. When we feel seen by the eyes of compassion and held by the eyes and the arms of compassion, we are more able to show compassion to others. So I think it's important to find those images, those beliefs, those touchstones which can help us come closer to our compassionate ideals. There is a beautiful drawing by the Japanese artist Hokusai, which is always a source of inspiration for me. It is the Taoist master Zhu Zheng who ascends a cloud ladder to the moon. Curators at the British Museum have described how Zhu Zheng was a Taoist master who used his powers to benefit the poor. One day, during the autumn moon festival, he stayed at a Buddhist temple and overheard a group of pilgrims lamenting that they would never see the legendary Palace of the Moon for themselves. Thereupon, Zhu fashioned a ladder from clouds, climbed up to the moon, and descended with it for the pilgrims to see. I love this image of care, of a dream fulfilled, as Zhu climbs higher than the highest peaks and seizes the moon as easily as picking an apple from the tree. One of my mantras, especially when I make mistakes or slip-ups or embarrassing blunders, is, "Only God is perfect." It can be helpful when you make a mistake with a tricky knitting pattern. Some people balk at God language and find it excluding in some way. My own beliefs about God are agnostic because I find it impossible for anyone to describe that which is so above and beyond us, within and around us. I suppose the key here is to recognize what you regard as the ultimate goodness or reality. Some might use words like holiness, spirit, while others will be more comfortable with contemplating the possibilities within the search for truth, for beauty and goodness. You may open up your mind and your arms as wide enough to say, "I embrace all of these on my personal quest. My faith is beyond words." For me, I have developed a simple trick to get over my automatic reaction to some language which I regard as overly narrow when it comes to religion. Words can get in the way of true connection, and so sometimes I wish we could have something like the translator gadget that they have on Star Trek. It seems to allow intergalactic travelers to instantly translate the language on the new planet when they arrive there. Translate it into something that they can understand and that they are comfortable with. So maybe your Star Trek translator will give you other words if you're not comfortable with the word God. And if God is everywhere, we may find the sacred in those moments of suffering as much as in those moments of joy. We are part of a greater whole, and our purpose in life is to seek out those connections which truly make us feel part of the oneness, of the unity of all creation. So I will end with a poem by the Sufi mystic Hafiz, an interpretation by Daniel Ladinsky from his book, Love Poems from God. My beloved said, "My name is not complete without yours." I thought, how could a human's worth ever be such? And God, knowing all our thoughts and all our thoughts are innocent steps on the path, then addressed my heart. God revealed a sublime truth to the world when he sang, "I am made whole by your life, Each soul completes me. Blessed be. And now let us sing our final hymn. It's in your green hymn book, hymn number 151, Be Thou My Vision. Please rise after the introduction for hymn 151. Go well and carry the sacred with you. May we all have the courage to face whatever comes our way in this coming week. Whatever may be uncertain in our lives, may we find comfort in the ultimate Spirit, and through our actions, may we become a blessing to each other and the world. Blessed be. Amen. Please be seated. Thank you to John, and thank for the wonderful music, and thank you to all our helpers that make these Sundays special. Please do come and join us for tea and refreshment, and then join me at the back of the chapel if you'd like to discuss vulnerability and any other aspect of Unitarianism in a little while. See you soon. Thank you, everyone.